and Superboy.
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action.
This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Birthright.
And you're listening to The Krypton Report.
And you're listening to Krypton Report.
Up in the sky, look!
It's a bird!
It's a plane! It's the Krypton Report!
The All Things Kryptonian podcast, including Superman and Supergirl.
We discuss games, movies, cartoons, TV shows, and comics.
Find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter.
And bird! And a plane! And Supergirl!
Welcome to Red Son with the Last Sons. This is our third part of our epic discussion of Superman Red Son. We started with the Last Sons. We're finishing with the Last Sons. It's been a journey, an adventure, but we're all here and glad to finally bring this discussion to you. So without further ado, let me introduce my right-hand man, the man who's been fighting alongside me on all the perils of Krypton and Earth, Mr. James Cole. Welcome, James.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm tired because, that's life as a parent. And then
yes, it is. I had to go pick up mine early this morning.
Never done it. And then all the way over from that beautiful country on the other side of the world, we have the Last Sons of Krypton with us. We have Ray. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, I am Ray from the House of Zod. I am one half of the Last Sons. I'm very happy to be on here, very happy to be discussing Red Son. We've done the comic. It's about time we do the film.
And we have Connor.
Hi, Connor from the House of L, the other half of the Last Sons, with my chum / rival, I guess, Ray from the House of Zod, because he has that last name. So,
Yes.
But yeah, full disclaimer, I haven't listened to your part 2 discussion because I wanted to go in blind for the animated discussion.
Which is perfectly fine. It was a, it was like I said to you guys before, like Brian was just so like he was like, I got to talk about this. We're like, yeah, we'll just go ahead and basically let Brian share about the comic and the movie as a one.
Yeah.
And James and I just kind of hit and miss here a little bit there, but we were discussing this a little bit off mic. We'll just kind of go around. Connor, how many times have you watched this?
Once.
Ray?
With my photographic memory, one is all I need.
Oh, that's just true. James?
I've probably seen it 3 times now. Probably only sat through a sitting like the entire thing from beginning to end once.
And I've done it twice. My initial view, and then I rewatched it. I started it last weekend, and then I finished it last night, which was cool. I wish I could have set it and just watched it in one setting, because both times I've watched it, it's been kind of like a stop and go. And I will say, I feel like this movie, you might need that. Because I felt like, and, spoilers or whatever, we're going to get into it, but I think I appreciated it more the second time I watched it. I think I kind of understood a little bit more. And with any adaptation, there's changes and things, and there's things I really like about what they changed, and there's things that I still don't quite understand. So I guess we'll just get into it, and we'll jump in. We'll just kind of start at the beginning and kind of work our way through. There is something neat I did notice the second time I watched it that I will put in here at the time that I was kind of glad that I noticed. But first of all, looking at this, and I'm preparing. We're going to do a discussion on all the continuity animated films, and I've been I've been rewatching all of them, and just kind of looking at some. Ooh.
Oh dear.
My throat's just dry from my snoring because, I'm slightly overweight and I have sinuses in the spring. There we go. I feel like DC anime films are almost starting to get like a two style art. Like, there's the continuity art and then there's the non-continuity art.
Yeah.
What does that mean? From a newbie's point of view, I'm not sure what that is.
So they do all these direct-to-video animated films. And starting in 2013, with their Flashpoint Paradox, is the change. They started making films where they would connect to each other.
Okay.
So there's like 15 of them, I think there'll be total, that connect into one overarching universe and style, and they're all drawn in like a similar, very same art style. They do for the most part the same voice cast. There are some changes, especially as a character becomes more prominent in the story. They'll actually get more of a named actor compared to just like a voiceover actor. But then you have the one-offs. Example, the film we're talking about now, Justice League versus the Fatal Five, Batman, Gotham by Gaslight. And I feel like those are all have a very similar art style. Not so much Bruce, like it's like Bruce Timm light. It's like, just looking at my collection over here, the art style for Assault on Arkham was completely different than the art style for, say, All-Star Superman, which really tried to emulate the book. Yeah. Same thing with the Wonder Woman or the Superman Doomsday.
All-Star Superman did, considering that was another sort of Elseworlds like Red Sun, that actually had really good animation.
Yes.
And they did try and do the style of the book, which is something I wish they did here.
And that's where I was getting to. Like, and I
sorry.
No, you're fine.
Sorry, guys, I'm back. Sorry, got disconnected.
You're fine. Because that's what I was getting to. Because just looking at Superman, Batman, Public Enemies, they tried really to imitate the artwork.
Yeah.
And I think where they started to kind of lose it a little is Gotham by Gaslight. The look of Batman is kind of Magnolia-esque, but the rest of it starts to lose that. And the same thing when they did Killing Joke.
Yeah.
It was just enough to kind of look like the artist, but the animation artwork was starting to slip away from that. And I think since Killing Joke, they've kind of had this other art style that they've kind of stayed in. That's what I said. It feels very almost Bruce Timm light. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it is cheap. Like if you look at Killing Joke, the art and the animation looks a little cheaper, and I let that slide because I was like, okay, this one's rated R. Maybe they're trying to keep costs down because they're not going to be able to recoup as much.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel like they've never really come back from that since that film. Like I said, there's only been, and I usually have my films in order of release, but the kids play with them, so I can't always rely on that.
Yeah.
Like I said, Red Sun, Fatal Five, Gotham by Gaslight, and
I think Ray's disconnected again.
No, I'm here.
Oh.
I think it was
sorry. My Skype just gave me a notification with you saying hello. You guys are gone.
Oh yeah, that was a bit delayed. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll say it's delayed. But okay, so all that, like I was digressing, but all that to kind of say that I wish this would have gone towards the art, but then at the same time, that gets a little rough because the art changes in the book. Like when we talk about the book, I'm a very big fan of the first book of the 3 parts. The art and the story. But I've been talking a lot, so I'll kind of let you guys take over for a moment and kind of just any first initial thoughts upon watching this.
Yeah, sure. Connor?
Yeah, sure. Just going off the animation thing, like you giving All Stars such a good example because it's like the same company and everything, and they did that Elseworld, and it did like emulate the style of the comics, but it wasn't just copying it; it just copied kind of the spirit of it. So everything was like the animation was really nice. It was kind of soft and detailed. Mm-hmm. Everything kind of flowed well, but with this Red Sun, this is like the difference is Red Sun didn't try and do anything. It just felt like they went for the cheapest, most generic possible animation. And I was like, I didn't expect to emulate the comic or anything, but it would be nice if it just looked, good.
Yeah.
And then I do compare it to stuff like Batman, Superman, Apocalypse, and All Star Superman. It falls so short because it looks like they just haven't tried at all. And unfortunately for me, if I'm watching an animated movie, the animation section is a very important part of that. It's kind of just like how the art in a comic book is, just as important as the writing. So I was really let down because I remember seeing the trailers thinking, oh, I hope this is from pre-post or whatever, but the whole movie was kind of looked like that. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the production design of the movie gives you the time period and over the decades, and that looks really good. But then, the animation of all the characters, you're right, it's just kind of generic. I mean, you can easily identify who everybody is, but that's also that can also be done fairly simply, even with generic animation. So the characters aren't anything spectacular, and the only person, and the only two people who change over the years really is Lois and Lex. So everybody else is just generic artwork. Superman stays the same. He doesn't age or change like he seems to in the comic books.
They just slightly change his outfit.
Yeah, that's it.
I don't think he gets any grey at the temples in this. I think he
no,
which I thought was fine.
No,
but
no, not at all. No.
Well, with the idea of the book where he lives for thousands of years, where he's basically immortal. So why does he age? Period in the book, but
that's a good point.
Does he just age until he gets gray and then he stops?
Yeah, I animation. Yeah. Look, I don't have as much experience with watching a lot of animated stuff as you guys, in particular, obviously, the DC sort of stuff. So I come from it very different perspective in the fact that generally I think I'm pretty disappointed with modern just animation as a whole. I mean, so the things that I watch are like the Avengers Assemble, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And it's just really, really generic, really simple animation. And unfortunately for me, I've come to that point where it's like, oh gosh, this is what we have. Okay, we've got to stick with it. So when I watched this, it really wasn't that much of an issue for me because for me it was kind of the norm. And again, this is me not having seen all the other stuff. Like I've seen a few things, Connor, that we've both watched, but not enough for it to be ingrained in my mind. And so when I say it's like, okay, this is the same kind of level stuff. We can get into it later, but there are certain things about the animation that I really did love. And whether that's the animation or not, I don't know, but I found the action scenes just awesome, brilliant. I mean, everything I wanted with Superman. Like you see the power set, you see his awesome power. So in that sense, and you can do that in an animation, or you can do that in Man of Steel. That's what made it kind of good for me. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I can see how simplistic the animation is, but again, for me, it's just like, well, this is what I see most of the time with the shows that I watch. So
yeah, I agree. There's a lot of good stuff in here. I agree that there's a lot of good stuff in here as well. I mean, the fight scenes, the way they're choreographed, those are really well done. Some of the animation in there is kind of, I noticed was like, okay, well, that's kind of cheaply done, you know, it's done in like what seems to be a cheap way. But I was like, I like what they're doing. It's really good. They're choreographed really well.
Yeah. The animation is kind of like the 4 o'clock in the afternoon cartoon or something you come home to after school. You know, that sort of cheapness. And it shouldn't be, because it's a film. Like it's a release on Blu-ray. It should be something bigger. But
that's partly why I don't buy any of these on. I mean, I don't have a 4K or anything, but it's partly why I wouldn't buy any of these on 4K, because there's no reason to. You know, Blu-ray is as good as it will be. It doesn't matter if you're playing it on 4K.
I bought The Death of Superman on 4K because it came out right at the time that we had gotten our 4K TV. Thank you, tax return. And I was like, all right, Death of Superman, you know, like I'm going to go all out. This is the film, you know? And I bought it on 4K and I watched it and I was like, okay. So then I put in the Blu-ray because I was like, I really want to compare. And I was like, I don't see anything. Like, same thing with James. I was like, you know what? There's nothing here enough for me to really, for these films to go 4K. And I agree completely with like the animation of just modern cartoons. I mean, thinking about not going too far out, but like the DC superhero girls, the one that's like they have now, like, you know, they had the version that was like on YouTube and like the shorts that was like really kind of cutesy, bright, well done animation. And then now it's very square, blocky, almost Teen Titans Go style animation, which is just simplistic and cheap.
It's funny because with Ray's comments on the action and stuff, and you talking about Death of Superman, like the thing, I guess for me the difference between this and Death of Superman is I think the art style they've chosen, like you talked about before, of like the in-continuity movies, I think lends itself better to cheaper animation because the characters, they have a distinct look, if that makes sense. And like, you know, I mean, obviously, like Superman doesn't look like classic Superman in the in-continuity movies like Death of Superman. He's got his own distinct look, so I think it's less noticeable when you cheap out. And the other thing is like they put like a lot of budget and effort into Superman versus Doomsday. So I gave the rest of like the animation a pass because they obviously put a lot of the budget and effort into that fight, which was like spectacular. Whereas this movie didn't have any points like that. I was kind of maybe hoping that, okay, maybe in the climax they'll bring out the big guns for like the action scenes, and it just never really happened. Which is one of the reasons I was, you know, disappointed with the animation so much in comparing it to Death of Superman, which came out recently, like 2018. So,
which is an in-continuity film as opposed to this Elseworlds Tale. And on the action note, I'm pretty sure I said something in our part 2 episode, which I'll bring up later when we get to a point in this episode about the action and about Superman's fight with Superior Man.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I know what you're going to say about.
I was going to say,
can I just ask?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, guys.
No, go for it.
I just want to ask a simple question to everyone, just to have a rough idea. I just want to say, did you like this movie? And then you guys just say yes or no. Can we do that now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll start we'll go around the table. So I'll start with Ray. Did you like this movie? I already know the
yes.
answer.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay. James?
Yes, I do.
Tyler?
Yes.
Me? No. Okay, good. I had a feeling I'm
the odd man out.
And that's the podcast, everybody. Good night.
I truly am the last son.
Right.
And I'll give you a quick, like I said, after watching it twice, I think I understood the movie better. And there's things that I like about the story of the movie. I'm not saying it's perfect.
Yeah.
It is an adaptation. And I guess, I mean, it's not like a spoiler, but we can kind of, let's start at the end and go backwards. Okay.
Right. It's like it's an adaptation, but it also kind of incorporates it like real world history during the time of Stalin with the comic book story.
Yeah.
As well as like different presidents of the United States.
Yeah, that's
so.
Right. Yeah.
One thing that I'll say, I like them leaving out the epilogue.
Yeah, I'd agree. Me too.
And that's,
agreed.
That's one thing we kind of wrestled around with when we discussed the comic, and I won't rehash all that discussion, but I'm glad they left it out because I feel like that detracts the Red Sun story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And starts to get into a larger story that was never really told to us.
Yeah.
So
and that
sorry.
Sorry, and that idea, because like when we discussed it in part one of discussing Red Sun the comic, and now watching the film, that idea of what you guys raised about the epilogue, and I did say in the comic it is kind of cool. It's a cool thing that they did at the end. It is a little unrelated, but it is a lot more prevalent here. Like if they did put it in, it would just. It had nothing to really do with it, and you're actually telling a second story with it by doing it.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that they didn't, because part of what I believe J.M. DeMatteis has done, and he's done really well in the film, is that he's got the material from Miller, and he's had to condense it into a film. This is a constraint of a film that you have. Sure, it's the same with the comic book, but with the film, you've got to adhere to certain beats and stuff. So he had to close out stuff. He had to change things, which I think he did really well. And by choosing to leave that out, I mean, that was probably a no-brainer, because there's no way you'd want to end on that. Anyway.
A lot of people got angry about that. And this is something that's always...
For the film?
Yeah, and this is something that's always peeved me about Red Sun in general, is like, some people got angry that they left out the epilogue and stuff, and they're like, oh, it was so good in the comic, and it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like people who read Red Sun don't actually devote any thought to the ending, because once you think about it, it just falls apart. But everyone was so angry that it didn't make it into the movie, and I'm like, no, it's good. But I guess the thing...
Oh, it's like everything is divisive, you know. Some people love that. Some people love that, or at least the idea of that.
Yeah.
And then others, try to think about it. And it's like, okay, well, does the ending lock us into just this loop where Superman is this character and he can't be anything to change anything because of what the ending is from the book?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, it's just people... I don't understand why people want one-to-one adaptations. Like, I never wanted that with Red Sun.
Me either.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because all we'd be getting is the same story, but with like worse artwork.
Exactly.
And condensed to 1 hour and 20 minutes. Like, why would you want that? You got to change it up for it to be good. Mm-hmm. If they succeeded or not, obviously we'll debate that. But I guess my thing with the ending though is I do like how they left out the epilogue, but I was hoping that they would do something else. As I was talking to Ray Zod off air, maybe like something crazy, like set up for a sequel, or I don't know, just change it up a bit. But then it just kind of ends very basically, and just kind of ends flat for me. So it's kind of like the opposite problem of the comic.
Yeah. If anything, I think they played it safe. J.M. DeMatteis played it safe for the ending. But it closed out everything. I mean, there were that much hanging out there. So you got a nice rounded, and with that thing with the sequel, it is a good idea as well. But like, I'm not sure how likely it would be that there would be a sequel or not. So I don't know whether they play a factor into that.
That's true. Yeah.
If it isn't, then well, they've got to wrap it up. Otherwise, we'd be saying, oh, why did they leave us hanging? With only one movie. So it's one or the other.
I guess I was going off the assumption that they would assume this would be successful because Red Son's an extremely popular story, and Red Son Superman's an extremely popular version of the character as well. I believe he showed up in like Final Crisis and stuff.
I think if you did,
I think he was in Convergence as well, as from what I recall hearing.
I got to reread Convergence at some point. I think
I'm getting to Convergence. There's a lot of New 52 stuff. I just finished my Superman run on a regular Superman book.
Oh, really?
On the regular
Superman.
Yeah, I finished reading Final Days of Superman. I am reading Lois and Clark, and then I'll go back and do some catch up on Action, and I'm reading everything along with Superman. I picked up some trades of Batman Superman, so I'm reading those.
Ooh, that's a really good run
as well, and then read Superman Wonder Woman as well.
Is that a recent one?
It's all New 52.
No, Superman Wonder Woman was in New 52 when they were a couple.
Right. Okay.
Tyler sent me, when he sent me some stuff a while back, he sent me like the first 4 issues of Superman Wonder Woman, and I read them, and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. It is
a good run. Like I was shocked. It's on my to read list now that I have a little bit of time.
Mm.
Yeah, it's kind of it's the good thing about the and sorry for you guys, us having DC Universe, we can just read those entire runs. We can just pick up our tablet or whatever and read an entire run of a book. Like everything New 52 is on there.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that is something that I would love to get, because being someone that's trying to explore the DC universe, that's just perfect, and I just hate it how it's not here. I'd be on that like a rash.
Tangent. My hope is, I guess, with them coming out with HBO Max, that is likely to be more widespread.
Okay.
My hope is maybe they're going to have maybe a similar DC tab as, say, like DC or Disney Plus has a Marvel tab, and you can enter DC, at least video content, and maybe DC Universe, if they downsize it because of HBO Max, maybe they'll keep it as like the Marvel Unlimited of DC, the DC Universe. Subscribe to this, and you can read everything in the catalog.
It may well be a reality.
They'll open that up.
Yeah,
to other countries.
Yeah, it may well be a reality considering our current climate in the world, and the way comics are going. So, it could be, dare I say, a little bit of a silver lining in that sense on the digital market for comics, and making it more accessible for everyone. But just going back to the ending, though, Tyler and James and Connor, what I thought and what I thought with it, it kind of encapsulated also for me a much tamer Lex Luthor, in the fact that he's more geared towards his relationship with Lois Lane, which there's nothing wrong with, I think, but I prefer the more driven Lex Luthor in the comics. He seemed to be a bit more obsessive, a bit more focused on getting Superman. And then what I loved about the comic was that once he had seemingly done that and dealt with that, he turned his efforts to something else. And he started curing stuff here and there. He lived to a ripe old age. And having said that, I prefer the comic version of Lex Luthor. But I can see what. Yeah, obviously the way DeMatteis has fashioned everything in this show, in the film, he's made Lex a little bit more. Although there were a couple of scenes there that, well, there's actually only one with him and Superior Man where he kind of pushes him to his limits, and you see a really bad side of Lex. I was thinking about this as well, and I couldn't remember. Maybe if you guys in the TV show, in the film as well, did Lex send that satellite to Metropolis, as in the comics?
Yeah.
Or that was pretty okay. Because I was thinking, if that was obscure, then if it was, then he's still pretty damn evil, you know.
Yeah, during his first introduction in the film, he's talking to Eisenhower, and he requests permission for a couple of things, and one of them is to crash a satellite onto the.
Yeah. Okay, so it's pretty much like the comic. Yeah. Well, those two things are pretty, pretty Lex Luthor. But apart from that, in the film, he seemed to be a little bit more kind of caring.
Yeah. I mean, in the film as well as the book, yes, it is Lex Luthor. Whereas if it did happen and it crashed, it could either be blamed for they crashed their satellite into the United States, or he knew that Superman would stop it. So, like, there was no real danger because he knew Superman would stop it. So either way, they come out looking like the bad guy. Either propaganda, that they crashed their satellite so he could save the day, or I mean, either way, it's still Lex not caring about the loss of life if it were to happen.
Yeah. No, his plan is good, but in that sense. But it's quite
on his side, or what happened.
Yeah,
Lex is definitely softer in this, and especially towards Lois. And I'm not really sure why, like, that choice was made. And then Lex kind of just steps down as president, and then doesn't really do anything. Like, I prefer the comic Lex. I'm just not sure. This Lex, I don't know, he just didn't seem as good and as smart.
Yeah, absolutely.
He definitely is the hero in this story, and I kind of wrestled with that the first time I watched it. I was like, but then the second time I watched it, I was kind of trying to think of like his in Elseworlds.
I still think he's too evil to be the hero of this story.
Yeah, I don't think there are any real heroes, and if anything, if heroes are there, even Superman, they have their flaws. So.
Right, and I think that's kind of where they were going more with it. Was they showed them more on an even plane, like they're not really defined by being the good or the bad. They're both in this different. I won't even say gray area, because Superman really thinks he is being the hero, and he loses his way.
I think morally Superman's about the same as he is in the comic.
Well, there's loss of life and stuff.
He
did it in the movie and the comic, didn't he?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, exactly. So he's
morally him and I meant Red Sun comic Superman and Red Sun movie Superman. Morally, they're the same. I think, unlike Lex Luthor. No, normal Superman doesn't go around lobotomizing people.
But the thing that
only Elseworld Supermans do.
But the thing that they do in this film is at the beginning, if we go back to the other end of the film, the very beginning with Svetlana and Superman, you get a lot more insight into Superman a bit more. The beginning of the comic was more. I love the beginning of it, because it made Superman out to be this. It's like an arms race. The Russians have obtained this weapon more powerful than a nuclear bomb, and he's talked about in that kind of sense. Whereas at the beginning of the film, you kind of get he kind of humanized, and you have this relationship with Svetlana, and him kind of dealing with his powers. I think that was a nice point of difference.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice through line for the character, an actual human connection that this character has in the movie. Because it starts with Svetlana. The turning point for him is Svetlana, and then what he hears at the end when what he thinks about at the end when he is saving the planet from Brainiac's black holes in his ship, is Svetlana at the end before he disappears and is assumed dead.
And I agree completely. Like that is one thing that I liked was, we had talked about how it felt like he had lost his connection so much with like humanity, and they really played up the fact that the Lana, for people who don't realize Svetlana is Lana, is much more important to him. We see them as children, and he's like, and in the sense, it stays true to the Superman mythos of her being one of the first people he reveals his powers to. And then, like, James was saying, the beats are like his turning points are around her and, him going to change and save the world by getting rid of Brainiac. And that's really a great through line of her words and what they meant to him.
So wait,
yeah, because that's when he finds her in the gulag, and when he finds her, and her only crime was knowing him before he was Superman. He knew that the world was seriously messed up, and so that's when he took out Stalin, and that's when he began this. So that was a turning point. He was just trying to be a good guy and do the right thing, even in a communist nation under Stalin. And then that happens, and then he has this turning point, and he tries to enforce peace on the world. And then until the very end, when everything comes full circle, and Brainiac reveals himself, and they do you're trying to keep the world in a bottle kind of thing. And then he kind of gets that idea back of what he started when he spoke with Svetlana in the very beginning. So then it's the turning points all connect to her.
Yeah.
See that?
Sorry, you better say something, Connor?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I like that. I think it just kind of simplifies it too much. Like, all of Superman's turning points have to revolve around someone else. Like, I liked how in the comic, like, he was making decisions based on his own, so when, obviously the turning point in the comic, he doesn't kill Stalin in the comic. It's the it's the line for food stamps. Yeah. And he sees everyone suffering and stuff and not being able to eat. And then he sees Alana there. And he's like, hey, look, there's no good reason I shouldn't take over. I can feed these people, And, I felt like that was just... I did like him killing Stalin, but I felt like it was just better progression than, one of Superman's loved ones dies again and he progresses that way. Like, it just felt a bit more nuanced in the comic to me.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I can see where you're coming from, but I think
I think the historical suffering.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I think the historical suffering, the tragedies, the human rights issues that they utilized from that point in time in Russia. I think they wanted to point that out and create a larger idea of suffering. And then, that kind of, and like he remembers her, like the end, it's not really like she's his turning point, but when he kind of, when he turns and he has for the whole world in a bottle and he turns, like he's remembering her and remembering what it's not like she is his turn. He's not there, but it's just like he remembers the turning point, and he goes back to the ideas of the world. Like, he doesn't have to save the world. The world can save itself.
So I guess that was my problem with the bottle scene in this movie. Is I feel like in the comic, the bottle scene was fine because he did lament quite a lot about the bottled city of Stalingrad. That was a constant failure that was plaguing him. So for me, that made perfect sense. Like, that was his biggest failure, and then he saw the note, blah, blah, blah. We kind of talked about it in the other episode. And I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, so I mean,
they do bring up that it is a failure, that he's been trying to do it for years, and that, also he failed with Brainiac, that Brainiac was using him all those years, and Brainiac could have reversed that any time.
Yeah, I think the strength of that... Sorry, Gunnar.
I just wanted to finish real quick. The other thing is, like, it didn't have as much build-up because you didn't have scenes in the comic like... for instance, the scene where no one's wearing life jackets on the boat. It didn't have any scenes of people coming complacent like that. And, the real feeling that Superman's just everyone's kind of caretaker. So I never got that vibe in the movie. So why don't you put the whole world in a bottle thing, Bottled City, it didn't resonate that much with me when I saw it in the movie. It kind of came out of nowhere. And in fact, it was at a point in the movie where I'm like, I wonder if they'll even have the same thing with a bottle comparison, and they did, so I was surprised. I think the idea of that, they do that in the comic book, like the people's complacency and stuff. I think the idea they try to get across in the same way is like during the conversation in like the control room between Wonder Woman, Superman, and Brainiac, where basically Superman's like, give me the statistics, and all of this stuff is up, and life expectancy and just all these positives and stuff. But they kind of give you the idea during that conversation that, this section of the world is under his control, and it's how he wants it. And it's, she's playing the other side of it, kind of voicing what we think. The idea that, the world is becoming complacent, and that everything. I think that's where they're going with that conversation, as opposed to giving you a visual montage of the world being complacent. And there's just the things on the screen, and then he switches to the screen. He switches the screens to the United States, and then there's the poor and the suffering and the riots and stuff like that. I think that's kind of the idea they were getting across in that scene of this movie.
And with that same line of thought is just kind of the idea of, like, we see like maybe two images of Lex playing chess, but we never see Superman playing chess. And I feel like that underlining theme of Lex has been removed. But let's see.
I know they didn't, and I know, in the book it was just a couple of images of all of the creatures or all of the people that created to send after Superman, but you don't even get a glimpse of them in this. I would have liked. I would have liked to see maybe, an overtime, like some kind of small montage, and it didn't even have to be a bunch of action scenes, but, something of him fighting different people, because they go from the beginning and the gulags to him being in charge, and then they give you Superior Man, and then they give you Batman, and then Brainiac, and it's like boom, boom, boom. And it's just supposed to span over so much time. There's still a lot of gaps, like there was in the book.
So let's touch on the change to Superior Man. Have any of you guys ever seen Team America World Police?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you know the theme song of that I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Were you about when you were watching this when Superior Man was like America? Were you about to think he was about to finish that song? Like,
never crossed my mind actually.
because that's how I felt about this guy. Like he's just gonna be like America, yeah. Like, this is one that got me just because they made like the ideal of the American Superior Man like so brainwashed, and just. I don't know, like, what's the word I'm searching for? Because he's like, I was watching the battle and he's fighting. He's like, I am an American. I don't give up. And it's just like, okay.
Yeah.
And then, but at the same time, when you look at this, that it's Luther controlling him, and we see that it's actual Luther controlling him.
Yeah.
And then they keep turning up his, like, energy level or strength. And he starts to become deformed and everything. And this one was one of those changes I don't like because at least in the original, there's like a redemptive sense to Superior Man.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
When they're fighting, he realizes they've done something. He has to take care of it. And he sacrifices himself to save people.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot more at stake as well. Like he's emitting radiation and he's causing all sorts of trouble all over the world with Superman. And so there was a lot more to it in the comic, I thought. But I found it necessary. I can understand the necessity of, from what I think, is that to show Lex Luthor being a little bit more sinister than, because otherwise he comes off, as Connor says, as being quite soft throughout the whole film. So this was just the one main instance for me that he actually showed some sort of, evil to him. But I did prefer the comic version of Superior Man.
It's showing him being evil without us actually feeling bad for him killing anybody like human. We're like, oh, it's a science project. Because he even says to Lois, like, afterwards, about it.
Yeah. I mean, he kind of, so the whole thing, like, quintessential Bizarro is that he's not evil. He's just a menace. And I think, like, the comic obviously, I think, did the whole Bizarro thing pretty much perfectly. It's like, the US Superman's a Bizarro Superman, all that stuff, and he looked like Bizarro. He was kind of a sad figure. In the movie, I guess I prefer the comic version, but if you're not doing a straight adaptation, then it's going to be hard to beat the comic version of the whole Superior Man and Superman conflict. So they had I didn't really mind Superior Man, and I think they kept kind of the tragic aspect with his like horrific death. And he kind of doesn't he look a bit like Bizarro as he's dying, if I recall. I can't really remember. But he
becomes more Bizarro like as they turn up his power. It starts to deform.
It starts to meet him.
I see. I think J.M. DeMatteis really, as you guys mentioned, Tyler and James, I think he's really focused on the through line in this film. So the other offshoots, like because this whole thing with Superior Man in the comics as well, there is a little bit of it goes off a little bit to spend time just kind of fleshing him out. But I think in the film, James DeMatteis just kind of, he's quite focused. He knows where he wants to get the story. And so even the stuff like Hal Jordan, he's taken that out about the whole backstory because it's not really useful in this film.
You wouldn't be able to fit it in.
Yeah, exactly. So he has to kind of trim a little bit of the fat here and there. And I think that's kind of what he did with Bizarro as well. But he's used him, as I mentioned. I think the main point was to use him to show Lex's evilness, basically.
Yeah. It wasn't really about Bizarro at all.
Yeah.
No.
So their version of Superior Man in this, I think there's a bunch of little aspects there. He looks normal because I think publicly revealing like a monster to the press and stuff like that, to the world, would be a lot, especially during the time period and the fact that they're dealing with, these incredible powers of Superman. So they make him look normal. So as his reveal is more appealing, and then the collateral damage that Bizarro creates in the comic book was like unintentional because his powers weren't perfect. He didn't have the control over them, so he created a lot of collateral damage in the comic that way, and then in the movie he just doesn't care. He comes in America and then he doesn't care about the collateral damage that he causes, the loss of Russian life, the loss of the Russians' lives of people in the streets. Which also brings me to the point I was making, is Superior Man is there. He's after Superman. So Superman leads him away from the city. So they have this pretty awesome choreographed fight in the mountains. Mm-hmm. In this movie, Superior Man is after Superman, so he follows him. Say Man of Steel, Zod's intentions are to kill humanity and to kill all of the humans that anybody that Superman cares about innocently. Collateral damage. He's not going to follow Superman from Metropolis to the middle of the desert or the mountains to have a fight, because he's there to kill. He's there to kill the human race.
Yeah. Was a bit off tangent. Was anyone else?
Villains, So why?
What were you saying?
Who, me?
We're cutting out a little bit.
You were saying,
sorry. The reason I started talking is because I thought James finished, but actually he cut out.
No, I did. I did finish. I think we all were kind of cutting out a little bit right there because I couldn't hear you.
Right. I was just saying I was disappointed in the satellite crash because there was no money shot whatsoever. The satellite just crashed and he saw Lois Lane. But like in the comic, you have this whole thing. America sees him saving them, despite the fact that he's Russian. He lifts up the Daily Planet. He gives the kid the balloon, and there was just nothing like that in that scene. There was nothing interesting about the satellite scene in the movie at all. No. So that was a pretty big letdown for me. I didn't expect like a one-to-one transition, but I thought it would be like eventful or something, or have a good moment, but it just didn't.
That scene
Yeah, that scene, the awesome scene of him like stopping the train.
Wasn't there.
Did we touch on that there's no Pete Ross character?
That's a big one.
I think we would have gotten to that here as soon as
that's a pretty
Batman.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I feel like we're transitioning into is
Can we go back to the Gulag real quick?
Yeah.
I like Superman finding out about Stalin's war crimes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Lana needed to die for Superman's reaction. I feel like if Superman found any Gulag like that under Stalin's authority, he probably would have killed Stalin. What do you guys think? I feel like, because like that was one of the things talked about in the comic as well. It's like we never really see Superman find out about these really bad things he's done.
No, I liked how he found out about it. It is a bit of a tropey thing, isn't it? That Lana has to die, and that kind of triggers him to do stuff. I didn't mind it that much. Like I said, the thing with seeing Svetlana in the Gulag and juxtaposing that with what you see her at the beginning, I found that really resonated with me. And you can easily say that that's kind of a tropey as well, but I don't know, with this Russian history and hearing about around this time period as well, hard sort of stuff, and to see characters kind of strong and assertive, like you saw Svetlana at the beginning, and then to see them broken in the gulag is really, I think, really powerful stuff. Whether or not she had to die or not, I don't know. Maybe it didn't really happen, but it was an easy take, I guess, for James DeMatteis to do it.
It was
like you said, it's a trope, and I think
it's just short.
Like you said, trope, and I mean, either way, the gulags would have been terrible, and I think would have pushed him to that limit. But also, you know, having the only person that he cared about, you know, die, kind of gives him,
I guess,
more of the push.
It's just when I saw, because like at this point, like when I saw Superman enter the gulag, I was like, well, like that was powerful to me because. You know, we know about history. We know how horrible those things are, and it was something I kind of wanted to see explored in the comic, and it wasn't. So seeing Superman see this absolute horror that the man he's been following do, like that was enough for me. That was already whoa. You know, I didn't need Lana to die on top of that because it was really about Superman's ideals and philosophy being challenged. Like everything you thought that you've been doing and you've been following, hey, this is it. And, you know, that was enough for me. But Svetlana dying, like, I'm making it out, like, it doesn't actually bug me that much. I don't think she needed to die, but it's not like I don't take any serious points away or anything. And also, like, Bruce Wayne, so we'll talk about this actually quickly because we're about to go to the Batman part, but Bruce Wayne being in the gulag, I thought was interesting.
Actually, that was good. That was a good point. Yep, sorry.
Because Superman rescues him, so like Batman seems like way more of a jerk in this movie than he does in the comic. Because in the comic, he's avenging his parents and lashing out against, you know, the whole regime. Whereas like in the movie, he's trying to kill the guy that rescued him from the gulag. But the thing is,
in the comic though, isn't he after Roslov? Roslov is the guy that killed his parents, right?
Yeah, but he says something like, I don't know. I remember him saying something kind of transferring the some of the blame onto Superman, and I just want to add one thing before we go full on Batman. The parts of the movie where Superman took an emotional punch, that was some good animation. You could see what Superman was thinking drawn into his face. Right. That's a good point. I think was it Jason Clarke who voiced Superman?
Jason Isaac. Yeah,
I was close. He did the accent was off sometimes.
I thought it was
pretty good.
Yeah.
His performance as Superman, especially emotionally, was the highlight of the movie for me. Like, I thought that was really great stuff. And the animation for his face.
It's like people with certain accents, they can do accents better. You know, when you get like Americans trying to do accents from all over the world, sometimes they're just terrible. But when you get other people from different parts of the world and they have different accents, they're better at doing other accents from other countries, it seems.
Well, I mean, you know where Jason Isaac's from?
Yep, Harry Potter.
Hey? Sorry?
Harry Potter.
Yeah, Harry Potter. Yeah. And the OA. I know him from the OA as well. He's really good in it.
I know him as that ruthless guy who burned the church and the Patriot. Yeah.
But he's awesome. I think the voicing for Superman was awesome. And just going on with that, like the music as well, the Russian music, really good. I mean, we were kind of blessed in the comic with great kind of Russian propaganda images, you know, and I think in the film we're kind of blessed with a really good soundtrack. I think the even Batman's accent, you know, I don't know if it's really authentic or not, but I like that Russian accent, so it seemed to come out all right from both of them.
Yeah, definitely, and I think he did not only did he do like a good accent, but he did it with such emotion. as well.
Yeah,
Like you really felt bad for Superman or related to him a lot, or empathized, I suppose. And like, as you said, James, like the animation of Superman's face is really good. I think like it does show his emotion and his turmoil. More so, like you get it in the comic, but I feel like Superman is a lot more. He feels a lot more like the central protagonist in this, if that makes sense. Like he's the character that we really connect to in the movie the most. Whereas in the comic, sure, we connected to him a bit at the start, but we were kind of just, I don't know, reading everything. But in the movie, he's the through line, I guess. It wasn't really a through line for me, but I guess Superman was it.
Yeah. Yeah, and on the idea of Batman, so I don't see it like him going after the guy who saved him. I don't think he feels like Superman was the guy who saved him, because in the Gulag at the time, his parents were dead. And he brings up the saying of, they say you can hear a leaf fall from 1,000 miles away, but yet you couldn't hear our screams, our cries. And his parents are dead. He still, because of who he is and the fact that he didn't rescue them before all of this like went down the way it did. Before he lost his parents to the atrocities and the starvation that they went through. You know what I mean? He doesn't look at him as a savior, even from that moment. You know what I mean? So
even though it'd still be
that's how I always.
Superman.
Yeah.
But Batman's.
But that's not how he's looking at it. That's not how his life was. You know.
I definitely get that. Yeah.
But I think Batman is a lot more ruthless in the film than in the comics as well.
For sure.
Because you get it first person account from him, how kind of evil he is. You see the gore, you see the corpses that he lays waste in the museum, and you get a little bit of the museum visitors and stuff. They're just innocent people. That staff member, don't worry, we've got a lot of time. Just make your way through in an orderly fashion, and it just blows up. And the fact that Batman is conscious of this, or actually actively went out of his way to lie to them, to say, 10 minutes, it's 10 seconds, that's pure evil. Yes. Whereas I felt in the comic, you guys were saying he was a terrorist, but he was fighting against the system that he was against, and he did set off bombs, but you never saw the carnage first up.
I think, didn't he let like the civilians escape from the museum in the comic? I'm pretty sure he did.
He could have
before he blew it up.
Yeah.
Give me a second. I'll look.
Because I'm pretty sure Lana was in the museum when he did that, and she got everyone out of there. He blew a bunch of other innocent people up. Don't get me wrong,
because I can't recall that in the comic, but it's a lot more apparent in the film. Like you see Superman taking away the debris, and you see it's really great. You see a lot of just corpses.
And he's bad in the comic, but he's so much worse in the movie.
And it's just. Oh, I was going to say something about you were saying. I can't remember. Oh, well. But yeah.
Sorry.
No, it was about earlier. I was going to tie back into what you were just saying now about Lana being at the museum and just her presence, just overall, bringing her back up in the bloodline and having her die. Because I was just going to mention, did you like, just yes or no, like him killing Stalin? That it was him that did it.
Yeah, me too. Yes, I did. Yeah.
At first I was like, but then, like I said, upon the second watch and seeing where they were going and the impact, I was like, okay, I see this. I understand this.
Yeah.
Superman...
Sorry.
Superman believes in communism. Stalin wasn't upholding like the principles of communism.
No, no.
Like he was being a dictator.
He was self-serving.
Exactly.
He was self-serving based on the front
Yes.
of his communist beliefs. And,
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's the change point when Superman goes from being part of something to actually having to lead it. And when he's the full-out leader, I think is where he departs. Now, before we finish up the Batman angle, let's step back one moment and discuss Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, her culmination comes in the Batman scene.
Right.
I did think, looking at this Wonder Woman story, I think was very... I liked a little bit, and at the same time I didn't, because I felt like when you're watching the film, you have this very wide-eyed Diana and him dancing, and and then they're friends, and then you have the scene. It jumps to her like helping the burning building, and her and him talking, and then her next scene is her with Batman.
Yeah,
and it's just interesting to me if you look at how her and Superman are talking during that burning building. And she's talking about why would a man do this? And they're talking, and then how she talks to Superman when she leaves him after the Batman scene. What happened? Like, I feel like her story is so cut that I don't understand her emotional beats. And you know, they take out the angle of her being kind of a blindly in love with him.
Yeah, which I liked. I mean, I liked that they took that away. Yeah.
I did too, but I feel like they didn't really replace it with anything else.
She didn't really feel like a character to me in this movie.
Exactly. That's where I was going. Because the only thing that she really does that I like in this is I like that she makes the call and breaks her. Because in the book, it feels almost like Superman's begging her to do it.
Oh, he manipulates her to do it. I think that's how I took it.
Yes,
I think accidentally manipulates her. I don't think he deliberately does it.
And in this, it's her judgment call. But and
I did prefer that. Yeah,
that's the one thing I like that they did differently with her in this. The other thing that I wrestle with her in this is Wonder Woman's supposed to be a very loving character, and this is an Elseworlds tale. Okay, so I put that in with that lens, but just the disgust and taste of how she talks about men makes me really not like her as a character, because it makes her like more of a sexist, all men are evil. Like, you know, part of her story is understanding what the old world concept of man's world was, and then how the Amazons are part of it. But there's so much dialogue in this about just the disdain for men. Men do this, men's world. And in the concept of this film, you're seeing the leaders being Superman, Luthor, and then, you know, the battle with the Green Lanterns, which we'll get to. But her just disgust, she said, you know, this is what happens to the women who follow a man blindly. But I never really felt like Wonder Woman followed him, blindly.
She didn't.
You know,
no, she didn't. No, I don't think she did. No.
So I just,
they were partners.
But I don't feel like we ever really got, like you said, her story. She didn't feel like a character. She was just there because she was there in the book.
Well, I think she was pretty much just an outsider. I mean, she was another perspective on this, and she had her own agenda as well. I mean, Themyscira, all female as well. I just felt that, and I do agree. I think that it was a bit heavy-handed, the repetitive, you know, men, and you know, I hate men. I was telling Connor as well. I felt maybe they could have done that. She could have mentioned something at the beginning and at the end, you know. But I can totally understand her disdain. I mean, I saw her as just being utterly frustrated with the whole process. She's trying to come in, she's trying to help and support, but she's just seeing endless conflict. And so she, you know, I think what I told Connor was that her spouting out men and all that is that this is just a pure justification for all her suspicions of how bad men can be, and so that's why she sounds so disdainful towards them. But I do agree that it got a bit like obvious that every beginning of a sentence was like men, you know.
Yeah.
So that got a bit,
And
I mean,
it was.
I would have liked more of her, because everything you just said makes perfect sense, but would be so much better had they developed her and gave her more. We saw her more interacted. We saw her more with Superman and what he was doing. We got to see her.
Yeah.
Maybe even a scene of her talking to her mother and disagreeing and defending Superman and his ideals would have
Right.
Really let me connect.
It was heavy. Yeah, it was heavy-handed, the whole men aspect. But as we've seen in so many different iterations of Wonder Woman, the Amazons, before they went to Themyscira, they were enslaved and had to fight for their freedom, and just the Amazons before Wonder Woman have this disdain for man's world, for the things that they had gone through. So she's raised with the same disdain for man's world, and just in this Elseworld tale, she's brought up to bring peace, but also with that same disdain for man's world. So it's like she's like fighting both of those ideas that she was brought up with. The terror of man's world, but also the fact that she wants to be an ambassador for peace in man's world.
Yeah, and I think she inevitably saved Superman in that scene with Batman and her and the lasso and everything. Yeah. It was more of a strategic, I think, thing. I mean, so it's not like she has any feelings for him, because that's made quite apparent at the beginning that she doesn't. But she has faith. She believes that he can actually do something to at least fix this problem. So it's a strategic thing from her to actually free him, but nothing more than that.
I also don't think she just let, a lunatic dressed as a bat with a Russian hat just trap Superman as well. But yeah, I get it. I mean, funnily enough, Ray, you and I, we didn't argue, but we didn't discuss either. We were like somewhere in between about this whole
I kind of like the image that you had.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was pretty accurate, because it's, for me, I guess what really irked me, I think, Tyler, you said it. I know this isn't Elseworlds, but Wonder Woman is supposed to be this compassionate, loving character. She's supposed to be peace, and she's just kind of a bee in this. So the first problem I had is, as some people have said, she didn't come off as likable to me. And to me, every scene she was in, she was preaching like, men this, men that, men are bad. And I was just kind of like, shut up. Like, I get it. You've already said it. And she's not likable either. And to me, it just felt like DeMatteis, who I love, by the way, was just trying too hard maybe to go the other direction that was gone in with the comics, with Wonder Woman being like kind of this simpering, love-stricken woman, and he went too far in the other direction and kind of overcompensated. Mm-hmm. And also all her scenes and dialogue with, like, because every time she's on screen, as Ray said, she opens up with men this, men that, and to me it just didn't fit in with the rest of the movie. It didn't contribute really to the overall message and tone or whatever of the movie itself. It just felt kind of out of place. I feel like if maybe she said some other stuff in addition to Men Suck, like, I would have liked it better. But for me, it just felt really jarring, because the movie isn't about men's failings, if that makes sense. It's not about how men ruin the world. It's about, a bunch of stuff, but that's not the core line of the movie.
No, but she can see what's going to happen. Like, she can see the imminent war the conflict that's happening, and she's trying to stop it. So I mean, and that's where it comes out that she hates that men just resort to violence and conflict.
not doing the best job, because I don't really remember her like doing anything to persuade anyone. She just yelled at people. Like,
that's what I'm saying. They didn't give her anything to do. Like, there's no scene of her like pleading or like really being the ambassador that she claims that she is there to be. And you know, one thing is, like, when James was talking about the Amazons, is that's all stuff that we're bringing in with us from previous knowledge. That's not contextual in the story about what the Amazons have been through and what they've done. So that kind of just, I just feel like she was very, in a short version, she was underserved.
I mean, it's the only way to justify the way she feels, though, is to bring that in with you. You know what I mean?
And I agree. I agree with you completely.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just that they should have given us that in the story.
Yeah, I mean, I agree she could probably have done something more. But again, it's the focus of J.M. DeMatteis. He's not going to delve into a side story of Wonder Woman, you know, trying to fight this thing from another side. It's all to do with her and her relationship with Superman. So he keeps everything trimmed, everything just kind of really neat.
I feel like he gives her a lot of screen time though. And I feel like it just could have been spent better. I feel like you could have changed like a couple of her scenes, and if you changed one of the scenes of her just going blah blah blah, you could have made a scene where she's like trying to persuade Superman reasonably, or say something, you know, that we can all kind of relate to, you know, and like she could have been our self-insert. Like the sort of outsider for, like, as you said, because she's predicting how things will go, but she came across as crass and stuff, and it's also a characterization of Wonder Woman I never particularly liked either, because she's not supposed to be like all the women on Amazon Island because they're kind of out of touch. Right. But you know, like, I mean, I guess like we'll conclude that when she pops up again. But yeah, I get where everyone's coming from and stuff. Funnily enough, I listened to that interview with J.M. DeMatteis because I really wanted to know what his thought process, and he didn't say anything about it. They didn't talk about it. So. But can I want to go back to the Gulag for one tiny thing.
Okay.
Oh, you love the Gulag.
This is actually what I'm
off with the Gulag.
It's a terrible thing to love.
We need more Gulags.
There you go. That's a drop for you, Tyler.
When they showed Batman, he had bats like coming out of the screen, and I was like, "Wait, is there only bats in that part of the cave?" He's with everyone else.
Look, that's just obviously just to highlight something.
The bats chose to nest in the cabin that him and his family lived in.
Destiny.
Yeah.
But that was literally all I wanted to.
You know, so going back to Batman there. So here in the comic book, like it's a single page where he does give the announcement, and there are some people running from the building, but then just all of the buildings explode. So there's nothing saying that he didn't jump the gun that I can tell, or that everybody escaped, that there wasn't collateral damage, because he does call himself and say that he calls it my terrorist organization. So he does refer to himself as a domestic terrorist, which usually terrorists don't do. I don't think they're terrorists, but I don't know, when you're blowing up buildings with innocent people in them, what else are you?
I guess Lana survived, but there probably was collateral damage, definitely, and people dying. I guess the movie really like shoved it in your face, though. Which I'm not saying is bad, but it definitely was like, hey, you have 30 seconds. Whoops.
You have 10 minutes, 10 seconds.
10 seconds. All he needed was a moo-ha-ha-ha-ha at the end.
He made up his mind 10 minutes ago.
Or a mustache to twirl.
Yeah, exactly. Can we just quickly bounce back to Pyotr Roslov as well? Because I feel he's quite important at the big difference to the comic and the film. Pete Ross. What I really enjoyed in the comic, and which we don't see in the film, and incidentally kind of has a domino effect throughout and has James DeMatteis kind of dodging and going around to actually tell a story without Peter Rosloff in there, is that scene with him almost committing suicide with Superman in the comic, because it's a really nice conversation that they have and a bit of insight where it's not only about the politics and the system, it's about how he feels Superman has kind of usurped him, and he makes a point in that comic about how it's funny that communism's all about equality, yet you are clearly not equal to any of us. And you're meant to be the bastion of our nation, and so and tied in with that with Batman as well. Like as I mentioned before, Piotr is one of the reasons that Batman is Batman in here as well, and he makes that little glib comment before he blows himself up that he sells Rosloff out to Superman.
I love that so much.
Yeah, that Rosloff was a traitor to him. Yeah.
But then that in turn, like another domino effect in the book, that then showed you a really bad side of Superman, because what he does, he lobotomizes Rosloff, and you don't see that in the film. You don't see him, although he makes mention of lobotomies and stuff like that. The fact that he actually, one of his apparent close friends, he lobotomizes, is quite a terrible thing that he does in the comic, and you don't see that in this film.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he was never really his close friend, though. Superman thought he was, but dude hated him the whole time.
Yeah.
I'm not saying lobotomy's good, though.
Yeah, and I mean, they show the lobotomized people. They show the Superman-controlled people with the discs on the side of their head, and he does give a mention to doing that to Batman.
Yes, he does. Yeah,
before he blows himself up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, which actually is the kind of substitute which James DeMatteis does, because one woman hears that and she goes, "God, you're terrible," as opposed in the comic when he actually does it to his close acquaintance or colleague. So there are ways which DeMatteis has kind of worked his way around it, and I think in a pretty good way, like actually extracting a really important figure in the comic and still telling a story.
I do like the way that it is handled here, that Wonder Woman doesn't go catatonic after what she does here.
Yes.
She does what she does. She experiences firsthand Superman basically saying, "I could kill you or I'm going to lobotomize you." And she's like, all right, firsthand, like, you're not who you say you are, who you want to be. You're not that person, and so now I'm leaving.
That makes sense.
It's kind of like, it's kind of interesting though, because despite all the bad stuff he does, he never really comes close to being as bad as Stalin.
No,
like
not at all. Oh, but that's what they're going for though, and I think, sorry, Connor, just to cut you off there quickly. That's what I think was a nice masterstroke by inserting Stalin. You asked Tyler before, do we like him killing Stalin, with that kind of theme of him becoming what he hates the most, and so he doesn't reach the heights of Stalin, as you say, Connor, but he certainly goes down the track of trying to form everyone in his vision, or trying to form the world in his vision, similar to what Stalin does.
Which ends up being like, he doesn't even mean to do that. It just sort of happens. And then obviously it's pointed out to him at the end and he's like, but so, yeah, I think someone mentioned this. I think it was in that interview that Phil did over at Capes and Lunatics, where, maybe Superman's justification was like, I'm not as bad as Stalin.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how he kind of slept at night, because he knows Stalin's so much worse that he's like, hey, I'm much better than that, despite the fact that he's obviously not. That being said, for the record, Connor of the House of L fully endorses a Superman regime. You cannot tell from my profile picture, I'm 100% down with that, so open up the multiverse and bring him in. I'm ready. I would follow him to the end.
To the sugar caves?
Well, yes.
So anyway, that was just a point there about Piotr.
No,
Yeah, that was a good part of the book. The fact that character was involved in the creation of Batman, and Batman used him. He was a traitor to Superman, and then Batman still got his revenge before the end by giving him up. It was a compelling part of the story in the book, but the way that they used the Gulag and Batman's act of terrorism against the regime, I think it was handled well in the movie to give it a nice line of who Batman was and where he came from, without having to add another character in there. So I think it was done done well both ways.
It was, but I do love two things. I do love how Pete Ross is also Joe Chill, and I do love how Batman's parents being murdered by Russian secret police. That just, I know there's the whole thing that's wrong with Russian Batman in the first place that Tyler brought up because it's only supposed to be Russian Superman, but Russian secret police murdering, that just feels so. Again, it's stuff like that happened.
Yeah.
So it feels really fitting for Batman's origin to be tweaked that way in this kind of Russian nightmare. But I did like Batman in this movie as well. So even though I thought he was the weakest part of the book, because again, do we need Russian Dark Knight Returns? But
we still don't get how he. We still don't get how he subdued Wonder Woman, though.
I know, that's a bit of a hanging thing.
I wouldn't have done it if I was the writer, because I feel like you're tackling something bigger that involves a lot more to really pay it off. More energy, more scenes, more time. And if they didn't do it in the book, just stick with it. Just put it in the same place, because you would need a whole nother scene or two to really be able to pull that off. And you only have so much time.
It's like the idea that Batman, no matter what version of Batman, is capable of he's always a jerk. He's always capable of being able to take down these godlike characters some way or another. You just roll with it.
But I don't roll, unfortunately. I do physically roll, but not with this. Superman, he has his Achilles heel, right? Which is obvious, kryptonite. So there's a whole thing, of course.
Or red sun.
Or a red sun. Or magic. He has 3 Achilles heels. But the other thing is,
or
it's
a
Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's a fighter. To me, Wonder Woman has none of the weaknesses. I don't know. I just feel like Batman should never be able to touch Wonder Woman unless he's amped up or something. I remember he tried to do it in the comics once, and she just had her foot on his head, and she's just stay down.
I can't remember everybody. He has ways to take everybody down, but the only way he has to take Diana down, that's the original storyline, but I think it's been adapted in different areas.
Justice League Doom.
That's where the story comes from. But in this other story I'm thinking about, I can't specifically remember which one it is, but he does say it actually might be in Injustice, but he does say that the idea that Diana has no weaknesses. She's almost as powerful as Superman, and she has no weaknesses like Superman does. His backup plan for her is Superman.
I thought you were about to say it was to bed her.
This isn't Bruce Timm. This isn't the Bruce Timm universe. Everybody's got to sleep with each other in the Bruce Timm universe. No, the idea is she doesn't have a weakness like Superman does, or like all of the other superpowered beings of the Justice League. So the only people who can take her down are these other super powered.
I thought.
I wish I knew exactly what story that was right now.
I thought. James, you're not talking, are you?
No.
Okay, cool. I just didn't want to make
because it's like he's got like briefcases. Yeah, he's got like briefcases and stuff, and they've got like all the symbols on them, and it's like all plans for everybody, you know. But hers is like empty. Is other powerful being like that. There, I'm done. Go ahead.
Sorry, man.
Oh, you're fine.
You kept cutting out and stuff, so I was never sure if you stopped talking.
Right, the delay and back and the calls. So you're good.
I heard enough to know what you said though. I'm pretty sure the briefcases. I'm pretty sure that's Doom, but I'm not 100% sure. But I know in Tower of Babel, I like his plan for her is to make her hallucinate or whatever, and she overexerts herself so much that she drops dead of a heart attack.
Wow.
Because like of her warrior spirit and stuff, and like if she's constantly seeing enemies like Cheetah and stuff, she'll just keep going until she drops dead. I
think the so in his plans in that story, it wasn't to eliminate everybody, it was to subdue them, incapacitate everybody.
And it got turned into lethal.
The villain who I think I think it was Roz in the book, but it was Vandal Savage in the movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just remember a thing. I think it was like a comic or something, or like a funny comic, and Robin is like, "Oh, so what's your contingency plan for me?" And Batman just doesn't respond. Just like you're not worthy.
Yeah.
But actually, going back to where we were, I mean, honestly, in my head, I feel like he would have gotten her with sleight of hand. He would have somehow used his like innate dexterity or tricked her to like sort of tying herself up with the lasso.
I mean, there are probably ways. I mean, Batman can do anything, can't he? So
he's a master manipulator.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Manipulated her into tying herself.
Yeah, that's it.
So see, maybe the weakness was betting Wonder Woman.
Oh, wow. Hey, I have some ideas. Spice things up.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So
cool. All right. So,
any other major points then?
Yeah, the Green Lanterns.
Ah, of course, yes.
One.
Yeah. So the third act then.
Okay. Yep. So.
Okay.
We kind of went to the end, but this part I was okay with the leaving out kind of the backstory of Hal Jordan about being
me too.
The prisoner of war, because even in the book it's a little confusing at first read about exactly what is going on with him and his mental state when it talks about his mind prison, and then when he got out actually building the prison and everything.
Yeah, that was just a little weird.
So I was okay with leaving that out. I like that they bring in Jon Stewart and Guy Gardner.
That was my favorite part about it.
With the Green Lanterns.
And they had Phil Lamar doing the voice as Jon Stewart.
The other Green Lanterns weren't in the comic? Maybe I remembered wrong.
I don't remember them calling them out by name.
Okay. Right.
So
they had like a different mantra, which was cool. I remember that.
But the one thing that I hate that they left out was my line that I loved in the book is when Superman says, a thought-based weapon against a person who can move faster than you can, like, the speed of thought.
Yeah. That would have been easy to insert. Easy to insert somewhere.
And that's just like the one thing in that I was like, "Ah, man!" Like that line was just so awesome.
Yeah, that was a good line. Yeah,
well, I guess
like
it's
that.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry. Oh, just quickly, I was saying, I like how they kept the infinity box. You know, that technique that they try to get Superman in, because I love that idea in the comic. And but he still breaks through, so that was fun.
Yeah.
He doesn't break through. He's in it, and it's Wonder Woman that breaks it, because it makes me wonder, had she not?
Oh, I thought wasn't he cracking it? No, okay, maybe. Yeah.
I think he started cracking it, but then they all converged on him and created it in like layer after layer after layer, and squeezed him down into it.
And then you hear the clink of her bracelets, and she descends.
That's right.
And this is the one time that which this would have been better had she been like her, like Superman on one side and Luthor on the other. But it's her talking to Superman with the Green Lantern Corps just kind of standing there. And then he goes to punch her, and she catches it.
Yeah,
and and that's the one time I'm like, dude, that was a dick move.
Yeah, this is like,
that's the point where like beyond him controlling the world and lobotomizing people. That's the part where you like know that Superman has really gone pretty far. That he's going to attack her when she's there for peace.
Yeah. And he was like, it feels like he's not like that though. And this scene is like the bottom of the barrel for the movie for me. This is like my most hated scene. So if people want to indulge me, I'll explain why, and then you may all pick my argument apart. So Superman loses the Green Lanterns. I don't really care about that. Just, changing it up a bit, but so she descends from the heavens, garbed in white, with a halo around her head, pretty much, or like the sun behind her. And she's just forcing her wisdom on everyone, and the bad Superman tries to punch her, and she just catches it. And I just felt like, Timotheus, are you in love with Wonder Woman? Because it's like she just comes down, pronounces her judgment, blah, blah, and she's like acting like this absolute authority and stuff. And I'm like, seriously? What am I watching right now? Did this just turn into like fan fiction or something? Because it just felt so forced to me. I just like hated it. It was because it just painted her in this literal angelic light when I just don't think she's really done anything to justify it. And she says she comes in peace, but she's still like not likable at all. But yeah, I'll leave it to you guys.
No, I agree with like the symbolism of her coming down to be angelic and to broker peace works, but I would have preferred, like I said, if it would have been like she had almost come down holding Luthor. Like she had grabbed Luthor and she's basically standing there holding Luthor and holding Superman. And like, all right, we're going to work this out. But, she just confronts Cal. And then she's like, Themyscira is done. We will block ourselves away from the world. And once again, it's a powerful statement. It's powerful, but is it earned? Did we do anything
enough for Wonder Woman for her to actually earn that action?
Well, we know my opinion on that.
And that's the thing. It's like you shortcut to get to this character, but it's like we didn't get enough of her and her actions and her storyline to justify this. And it's all inferences that we've made or little things that were like, well, this, yes, okay. I see what you're saying. I see where they were going, but it just wasn't. You know what I'm saying? It just wasn't, I feel like, earned as well.
Yeah, no, totally understand where you're coming from. No, and yeah, I mean, I'd agree to that extent. I mean, they didn't flesh her out enough, but look, I didn't mind it as well. I thought the way I saw Wonder Woman, and arguably you can say that her character could be exchanged with maybe another character, but I guess he just chose Wonder Woman, or being that outsider, or being that broker of peace, as you're saying. And so her kind of flying away, it does seem that she has this a high authority, Themyscira, whether or not that's kind of like a Mount Olympus or an Asgard or something. She is above all this violence, it seems. But I do agree, Connor, as you're saying, like she's still not a compassionate. She doesn't come across as compassionate or anything like that, which is unfortunate because just that would have helped, I think. But I don't know. I like that she stepped in like she did.
She says now Themyscira is gone, we'll never come back, and it's just kind of like, okay, what did you guys do anyway? What were you contributing to the world? You weren't doing anything. You were just sitting on your island, and then you came out and yelled at some people, and it's like, all right, cool. You go.
Okay, I kind of just assumed that it's not obviously spelled out in the film, but that she had done some deeds in the world before. Themyscira has a certain status in the world, but yeah, I guess that was just.
Themyscira didn't really do anything in the comic either. It was just Wonder Woman, so that's why I didn't really assume.
I mean, they discuss a Themysciran embassy. Maybe if there's only one in Russia, I don't know, because of her allegiance with Superman. But I think it's the idea that they open themselves up. They open their borders up to enter man's world to try and share their ideals of peace, because they have had peace for thousands of years, and try and open that up and give those ideas to the world. But like the world's unaccepting of them. If the most powerful man on the planet can't hold up those ideals, then she might as well lock Themyscira off again and them remain their own civilization.
I guess, the final nail was already in the coffin for me with this scene, but the thing that I hated was it Hal Jordan afterwards, who's like, women, right? And then Superman punches him. I'm just like, what am I watching? At this point, for me, even before this point, like the movie had already fallen apart. And I was hoping that the climax would, kind of fix it, but it didn't for me, really.
Well, that's just misogyny right there.
Yeah.
Like they went to that. They went that length to prove her point.
Yeah. I mean, and arguably, again, you can say around the sign of the times, around the 40s, 30s, 40s. Because the views are,
But it wasn't. It was 83. Like nearly.
Yeah, 83, is it? Okay. Well,
because there's the quick line where Luthor says about when he's getting the ring with Kennedy, he says, this could take decades to re-engineer. And then there's a quick, and then it changes and says 1983. And this another problem I have is like the same thing I had in the book is sometimes the changing of time is always kind of odd of like what's happened in the world. At least in the book, they aged Superman a little bit, and we talked about that. And then they changed his costume, and here they slightly changed his outfit. And Luthor,
you can only tell from
Luthor just gets less hair.
Yeah, that's your wilting flower, or your time lapse is
right.
the
So here's something I noticed on the second view that I think is kind of a nod to the epilogue. Okay? If you watch this movie, everybody kind of has black eyes. Lois has her purple eyes. Lex and Superman are the only ones that have gray eyes. And they even did gray eyes for Lex in the Death and Reign of Superman story, but they're the only two characters that have gray eyes.
Okay.
And I was like, that is a choice that you make specifically.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because usually Superman's depicted as blue-eyed, dark, black hair, blue eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that had to have been a conscious choice to at least.
And so there's a reason. there's a reason that choice was made. You know, like I said,
It probably was the epilogue. That's the reason.
and that's what I wonder because, you know, if you go back and you watch Death of Superman and Reign of the Superman, Lex has gray eyes, Lois has purple, Superman has blue, and then Superboy has gray eyes because it's one of the nods to tell you that he's part Lex.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And I know that's a different continuity than this, but it's just one of those details that I picked up when I was watching it for the second time. And like I said, I think our discussion we've all made very great, valid points about this film. And I don't know if I would say I like this better than the book. I think this one's a little cleaner, and that's what happens a lot of times in these adaptations, is because you don't have to do these pocket side tangent stories, or you don't give certain details. You're moving that through line for the film. So I think the film story is a little bit cleaner, and I enjoy it. You know, the overarching imagery and everything's there. There are things that I would have preferred differently. There's things I would have liked to have seen. But overall, I'm not disappointed because Red Son's never been like, oh my God, Superman, Red Son. Because to me, like I said before, after the first book, I feel like then we just go into Dictator Superman, and that's not my Superman. That's not what I connect with the character. That's why I'm not sitting here in a basement full of Superman stuff because of Dictator Superman.
Yeah.
So to me, it's a Superman story that I think's, you know, good for people to read and experience, but I'm not I'm not in love with the story. Like, it's not like if I had, what's your one Superman story, Tyler, you have to read for the rest of your life? This is not it. But, you know, final thoughts. Just real quick, we'll go around, just kind of summarize it.
Just one little thing I want to say. You brought up the line of a while back of when we started the Green Lanterns, a thought-based weapon against a person who can move faster than thought.
Yep.
There was a Green Lantern, the Squirrel, Chip, who used his Green Lantern ring to stop Superman's brain synapses from firing. So he couldn't think, he couldn't move, he couldn't do anything.
Huh.
Oh,
that's pretty epic.
So it's possible. Yeah.
So, but it's, you know, the story brings up the point of, you know, nobody ever thinks of the little guy. What can the little guy do? Well, the little guy shuts you down with a thought. So without you even seeing him.
Yeah, that's good.
So just a little nugget to point out there.
I didn't know a squirrel had the ring.
Injustice. That's actually in Injustice when the Green Lantern Corps comes to Earth. They are all fighting Superman, and Chip the squirrel takes Superman down by shutting down his brain synapses.
Wow. Cool. Just like a little rocket raccoon.
Yeah.
So James, if you want to go ahead and just kind of sum up final thoughts on Red Son here.
I mean, I like I said at the beginning, I like this movie. I like the through line. The way it starts has at least some kind of influence on the end. Not saying it's the end all, but it's it's Superman reaching back and you know, getting his humanity back. Like I said, pretty well choreographed action scenes. There's some stuff they added that I liked, some things that they took away that I like, and also some things that I think that maybe they did better in the book. But I mean, overall, it was a decent adaptation, and I like it. I've watched it a few times, you know. It may be a little while before I watch it again, but I'll watch it again. It will be one that I watch again. I mean, it's no Death of Superman, but I'll definitely watch it again from time to time. It was a good story. It was well done.
Mm-hmm. Cool. How about you, Connor?
Sure. So, so for me, like a lot of people said there was like a through line for them and stuff that they saw. I didn't see any through line. So for me, the whole thing felt very muddled and all over the place, and it didn't really know what it was trying to do. I absolutely love J.M. DeMatteis. He did fantastic Ghost Rider. He has a very big love for Superman. He has very similar opinions of Superman of me. He truly believes that no matter how Superman is brought up, he has innate good. Mm-hmm. Fun fact for those who haven't listened to the interview yet over on Capes and Lunatics, he says he wanted to do an Elseworlds where Superman was raised by white supremacists.
Oh, wow.
But Superman would still go back to good.
I feel like that would be a great story. Like, I honestly think that'd be a great story done in like the Black Label books.
Yeah. Well, I think
you would have some atrocities in that for sure. Some nasty violence.
Because I actually kind of
and themes.
I really dig the idea of him being raised and surrounded by like pure pieces of crap evil, and then realizing that no, this is not right, and I will do good. I think there's a strong story in that.
Yeah,
It definitely needs to be a Black Label book.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons it was rejected is DC asked, like, what would you even do for the cover? You wouldn't want like
just put
white supremacists wearing the Superman S.
I wouldn't do that. I would just for the cover, I would just put like Superman, like the Clark Superman with like a shaved head. And I wouldn't even put the S on it. It would just kind of be like with like shadow on his face and like a tear running down with a shaved head.
Yeah.
Standing with his hands on his hips, so you know who it is.
Yeah. And he says no matter how evil Superman is, he always comes back, stuff like that, because it's innate good. So my point is here, I love J.M. DeMatteis. So I guess I had decent expectations of this movie, but I didn't like it. I liked the first half, even though I thought the animation was really flat. Unfortunately, this movie just didn't do it for me. I much prefer the comic. And again, I don't consider the comic to be like one of the be-all, end-all Superman stories. I really respect the comic. I think it's really good. And I think there's a lot of great ideas in it, but it's not perfect. But this movie, I really didn't enjoy it. I felt it was all over the place, and the biggest con for me was just the absolutely flat animation. I just can't get past it, unfortunately. So I think I did a review on Letterboxd and I ended up giving it, I think, like 2 out of 5 stars. Will I watch it again? Maybe one day.
I just
don't know.
Watch it at least one more time. Maybe soon, just because I felt like when I watched it a second time, I got a little bit more perspective of the film itself.
Okay.
And what they were doing with. And then after that, if you're like, I hate this thing, okay, I got you. But that's just my recommend. It's like so many kind of these adaptations. My first viewing is so much of like taking it in, processing the differences, and then trying to watch it again for what they've given me. And be like, do I like what I have at all? Not thinking about what they didn't do. So,
I mean, I'll try that, but like the differences wasn't a thing for me. Like I wasn't really comparing it to the comic, or I was actively trying not to anyway in my review and viewing. I was trying to treat it as its own thing, and as its own thing, I feel like it doesn't hold up. But I will watch it again. I will give it another shot. But so unfortunately it's a thumbs down from me.
Well, just going off the discussion Connor and I had this morning, a little different from Connor's. I really enjoyed it. I equally, similar to you, Tyler, I equally enjoyed the comic and the film. not comparing them at all. I find them just both enjoyable in their own right. I found the writing quite tight. I found the ideas very clear as to where J.M. DeMatteis wanted to go with the story. As I mentioned, he trimmed a lot of stuff which needed to be done. I mean, you're never going to encapsulate something in an adaptation. It's its own art form in itself. So I found the pacing worked well. The action scenes were great. I do love my action scenes. The acting and the soundtrack was really good. Animation, as I mentioned at the top, I haven't watched enough of these things, but I've kind of accepted animation to this standard anyway. So whether or not that will need to change if I watch something else, we'll have to see. I'd definitely watch this again. I'd consider buying this Blu-ray of it as well, because I can see myself watching it again, similar to as I can see rereading Red Son. I can't remember what we rated it in the part one, but I don't think I gave it like a 9 or a 10 out of 10 or anything like that. But it's a decent enough read. There's enough happening in there. There's so many moving parts in it, again, opposed to the film, which is very clear cut. Definitely worth a reread, definitely worth a rewatch.
All right. So I think, we're all we know where we stand, and I mean, I think it's worth a read and a watch just for the fun of the discussion. Like, just it's fun to talk about things here, and we all love the character, and it's fun to kind of pick it apart what we don't like about different interpretations in a way that we can all represent ourselves and not feel like, oh, I have to agree or I have to I can't disagree.
Yeah, of course.
And that's
that'd be no fun if we did that.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. Like this particular version, like this is one of those where I can sit back and be like, okay, I'm not a large enough fan to, and not unless I were like, it's not that I don't care. I just, I can appreciate or whatever, like however they wanted to present Red Son. I'm not going to be hurt because it's not the true Superman. You know what I'm saying? It's not like they took the true Superman and made him look bad. They have an Elseworld, different variation Superman. Like, because even when I was rewatching it last week, Solomon was like, "What you watching, Daddy?" And I was like, "I'm gonna watch the Superman." And then he was like, "What's going on?" Like, and I was explaining it to him. He's like, "Is Superman bad?" I'm like, "No, he's just different." He's like, okay.
He's just confused.
It's like, and it's always interesting and to put things in a perspective. Like, and I think about this more now. Is like, if I'm explaining this to my kids, like, what's the core essence of this explanation? Because so many shows and stuff we watch, like, there's times where villains are now acting good. Like even Solomon's sat with me and we watched Justice League War, and he wants to watch Thrones of Atlantis with me, and he's watched a lot of these with me, and we're going through it, and he says, which one we were watching the other day, and he was like, it was when we were watching Red Son. He mentioned, Lex Luthor. He's like, he's not being good now, is he? And I said, no. He's like, and because he brought back up in Death of Superman how Lex helped Superman fight Doomsday, and then trying to explain to that sometimes bad people do good things to make themselves look good, even though they're really not good. And it's just interesting when you have these stories and you have to try to explain it to young children who look at things so black and white and good and bad. So.
Yeah. What does Wolverine do?
He's the best at what he does. That's what he is.
Yeah. How does he deal with villains?
But you guys go ahead.
That's you're just blunt. You hack them into pieces.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Go ahead and give us some plugs, some information about your show as we wrap up.
Okay, I guess I'll go.
You go for it, Connor. Yeah.
Sorry. So you can find Ray and I on Last Sons of Krypton, a Superman podcast. So at LSK Podcast on Twitter. or if you just search Last Sons of Krypton podcast, you'll find us. In fact, I think even if you search Superman podcast on Google, we're on the front page, which is pretty nice.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so we basically review mostly comics. Sometimes we dip into other media. We've done like some Smallville, some Adventures of Superman. But yeah, Ray and I just talk about, because Ray's a newbie to Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's becoming less true every 2 weeks. And I'm not. And we just, two different opinions and everything on all that. So, yeah. And I have another podcast called the Immortal Iron Fist Podcast. Sons of the Dragon, the Immortal Iron Fist Podcast. If you search Iron Fist Podcast, you'll find us. Basically, it's a podcast about the character Iron Fist. And it's good. And Ray, do you want to...
Yes, highly recommended that Immortal Iron Fist podcast as well. Very, very good. The guys do very good work over there, and a very cool character. I podcast another character-based show called Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast. You can find me on @ITK Moon Knight on Twitter or on Facebook, facebook.com/ITK Moon Knight. So we release shows every week or so, talk about comics, classic comics, recent comics, modern comics, action figures, video games, anything to do with Moon Knight, we've got it covered. So, yeah, check us out.
I recommend that podcast also.
Oh, thank you, sir.
It's good. It's great, actually. It's not nearly good. So, yeah. And obviously we recommend Krypton Report as well.
Yes.
Which we're currently on.
Yes. And a huge thank you, guys. Thanks for having us so cool.
On.
Yeah.
Oh, no problem.
It was a pleasure.
It's fun to mix it up, and it's fun to get different perspectives because, like, James and I have very similar viewpoints, and even then we try to find the differences and discuss it. And then sometimes that's why we bring Brian on, because he's like, no.
we like a lot of the same stuff, and we try to see it from the angles that people we try to see the angles of why people don't like things as well. So we try to see the big picture, not just what we like, and discuss it. So it's nice to hear it from other people as well.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's really awesome. I've met a lot of podcasters that are Superman fans through Last Sons of Krypton and you guys, and it's just cool to see how everyone loves the character, and we all have some of us pretty different opinions on why we like them, but it's
nudge, wink, wink.
No, I wasn't talking about that at all. I'm just saying
no.
Well, you despise Injustice. I love reading Injustice. I love when Superman goes bad the way he goes bad in that book.
But you still love the character as well.
To each his own.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an 80-plus-year-old character that has done countless interpretations and changes that it's just fun to what draws you in about the character. What do you like? What do you not like? What versions do people love that you're just like, I don't feel it.
Yeah.
But
that's okay.
Yeah. And it's okay to have different thoughts, people.
Definitely.
Listeners out there, it is okay for you to think for yourself.
Yeah, stop. Superman fandom's terrible for getting into horrendous internet fights. It's like, guys, try and act like the character that you're supposedly so in love with. I'm sure.
Exactly.
It's okay for everybody to love their own version of Superman, because there are so many.
For sure.
Like Trunks versus no Trunks. Like, really?
Oh, my Lord.
Or Reeve versus Cavill. I mean.
And that's where we're going to wrap up our episode, people. All right? So, remember.
Look up in the sky.
Look up in the sky.
Look in the sky.